Welcome to 10.8. 10.8 is a more personal and journal-style series of articles by myself that will center around police management, criminology, and policing. The articles will not be the typical citation-driven essay style that I use. For those articles, please see my Medium page, published books such as Amazon, especially The Business of Policing, Volume 1, Crimes and Punishments in the 21st Century, or scientific published literature highlighted by The Business of Policing, Volume 2, Managing Ethical Police Conduct. Here I will post frequent thought streams on my personal philosophies. Thanks for listening in. Deceitful power grabs in the name of Black Lives Matter. 10/8, November 3rd, 2020. The manipulation of police reform for personal gain. I've spent a significant amount of time explaining our travels during the Black Lives Matter movement's rise and the apparent desire to reform police practices. We preached about how easy it is to make legislative changes. It just seemed none of the activists wanted to put any effort into making things better for the community. The only time those in these circles would work would be for their own interests of both financial and social gain. Maybe I have a little animosity because I feel that these people picked up my terminology and ideas, then twisted them to sound pseudo-intellectual in their pursuit of power. One of the people we spent time discussing police reform and how to achieve it was Portland's Joanne Hardesty, a Democrat politician who is currently a Portland City Commissioner, having taken office on the Portland City Council in January of 2019. This story is a special one in which you must stick around for the entirety. Each time you will think it could not get worse, but it does. In King County, Washington, there are chapter amendments 5 and 6. And let's step back for a minute and start in this county of King County, Oregon, and then zoom into Portland. Here, they are attempting to redefine what a sheriff is. This is yet another prime example of how leftist reformers continue to fight to implement policies that go against their proclaimed desires. For years and years, I have been hearing about taking power away from the state and giving it to the communities, the community people, as a primary means of police reform. In King County, they are fighting to have a direct representative of the people, a police sheriff who is voted into office at the will of the constituents, replaced with an appointed police commissioner who serves at the county executive and council's will. This is taking power directly from the people and giving it to the power-greedy system these activists claim to oppose. Why? Presumably because they do not like how the duly elected sheriff reacted to the rioting in Seattle. I have all kinds of ideas about better ways to represent the community than a sheriff. Still, the sheriff is by far the most moral and community-driven way that policing has ever been conducted in America. There are two measures in King County. One just changes the appointment of the sheriff, and the other makes a power grab of control over policy and practice, regardless of whether the sheriff is elected or appointed. And come to find out, this was previously attempted in 2016 in Multnomah County, which has me wondering how common is this type of measure all over? Portland's measure 2617. Back to Portland and Joanne Hardesty. Hardesty is the leading proponent of a completely ignorant and naive attempt at police reform. When I read this garbage, I began to have deep regrets about talking to any of these people. They threw out half of what I said was necessary and then wholly bastardized the other half. They are attempting to establish a new civilian oversight board because they do not like the old civilian oversight board. In this reform, they are making a civilian oversight board solely from city council appointments. Not a board comprised of community members, a board filled by appointments from a city council that Joanne Hardesty just happens to be a member of. Here are a few notes that I felt were worthy of your attention. There is no specific terminology or plan on how to get this enacted. How a proposal can be taken seriously that has no plan for execution is an indictment on Portlanders. The director of the board serves at the pleasure of the board. How can this be? The person responsible for overseeing the board can be fired by the board? And remember, this board is direct appointments by Ms. Hardesty and her colleagues. Attorney Jason Caffery, a campaign steering committee member, said, quote, "The goal is to catapult the Black Lives Matter movement into big structural change," unquote. This board will make, air quotes, recommendations to the police, but if the police fail to abide by the recommendations, the new board takes it to the city council for a vote. This raises the yearly budget of the community board over a minimum of $8 million. Money taken from the taxpayers. And finally, of my points, number 6, Portland City Auditor Mary Hall Caballero, who oversees the independent police review that's currently in place, argues the city is rushing an unvetted proposal without a clear plan for how it will work once Portlanders vote it into existence. She pointed to the lack of government oversight in the proposal. Can't argue with that. Changes like this not only defy rational thinking, they often run afoul of pre-existing legal contracts, other laws, U.S. and state constitutions, civil rights, and more. I'm echoing some of the police union chiefs' concerns in this matter. So many in advocacy circles have no appreciation for the complexity in the operations of such large organizations and absolutely refuse to learn from those who do. More importantly, though there is red tape for sure, much of the organizational operations complexity is because of slowly working out the nuances in employee relations and legislative policy. Take this section for an example of the police union's concern over 14th Amendment violations. The board shall have the power to compel sworn members of the Portland Police Bureau and their supervisors to participate in investigations and to completely and truthfully answer all questions. Refusal to truthfully and completely answer all questions may result in discipline up to and including termination. Who determines truthful and complete? This subjective terminology is a type of rhetoric that elites use to selectively enforce standards on their political enemies. The 14th Amendment reads in part, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." In my model, the boards must be comprised of invested community shareholders, independent of government and politics. Along with avoiding subjective terminology and social constructs, the third must never do under the civilian-led policing is no political proxies. An individual who serves at the pleasure of an appointment or at will must do whatever their boss demands. Another example of this is with appointed police commissioners. If those appointed officials buck those who appointed them, their career is finished. A quote from one of the people involved, Mary Hall Caballero, who we cited before. "Is it going to be something that floats in a parallel universe of the rest of the city and no one can touch it, but money just keeps flowing toward it? Government with no checks on it is never a good idea." I'm no fan of being proven right about this one. This indeed confirms our proclamation that you can put nearly anything into local law if you just try. I know this sounds bad, but now I seriously need you to sit down while I read you this next part. This newly established board is empowered to investigate all in-custody deaths, deadly force uses, complaints of excessive force, discrimination, and civil rights violations. And get this, brace yourself. The policy encourages board members to have lived experience with systemic racism, mental illness, yes, mental illness, and addiction. Yes, again, I said addiction. Lived experiences with mental illness and addiction. On top of all this, Measure 26-217 prohibits current or former police officers or anyone in their immediate families from serving on the board. They will be conducting investigations with addicted and mentally ill members with no experience in law enforcement investigation. Holy Jesus.